Encounter at Farpoint. On the maiden voyage of the Starship Enterprise, the crew has to go investigate the mystery of Farpoint Station. Since this is the first mission, they have to introduce all the characters outright.
Every character kind of says who they are right at the beginning. Picard comes right out and says,
I don't feel comfortable with children.
I just met you, Riker, but your job is to keep kids off the bridge.
Well, at least he has his priorities straight. On the way, they run into this strange, powerful grid, which turns out to be the entity Q, and he tells them to turn back because they're a dangerous, savage child race.
I feel like they did a good job of building up Q as a threat. The way they reacted to him allowed them to use the situation to display all the characters' different personalities and show how they react to different situations.
They decide to try and outrun Q, and even from the beginning, they're deciding, how can we outsmart this thing? How can we use our character traits to work together to get around this obstacle? And I like that.
There's a sense of action in terms of we're doing something about it, and not just in terms of blast everything away.
They're thinking quick on their feet and trying to go outside the box.
Let's see what this Galaxy-class starship can do. Lieutenant, inform engine room to prepare for maximum acceleration.
Aye, sir.
Right away, Tasha Yar and Worf are the exact same character. The only difference is the fact that Worf is a Klingon. You could exchange their dialogue and it wouldn't change anything. You could take one of them out and give all the dialogue to the other character and that wouldn't change anything.
Respectfully submit, our only choice is to fight.
Fight or try to escape. Hostile now at warp 9.8, sir.
Our velocity is only 9.5, sir. Permission to clean up the bridge.
Lieutenant Worf is right, sir.
At least Worf has some additional story potential, being that he's a Klingon on a ship that's part of Starfleet.
It doesn't really make sense that the ship has all these kids and families on board when they are the flagship. They go out first and encounter stuff that no one has ever run into or even imagined before, and as soon as they run into the first unexpected thing, they separate the ship into two pieces to get those people to safety. Why are they even there in the first place? I can understand if the Enterprise was a colony ship or something, but it's not. While they're doing that, Picard, Troy, Data, and Yar are suddenly transported to a court hearing where Q is the judge, and he's going to judge not just them, but the entire human race.
The bailiff-type guy at this trial is played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat, and he looks awesome with a mustache.
Agreed. So I finally meet the first officer, Riker, who was already at Farpoint Station, and he's there with Wesley and Beverly and Geordi. I know Starfleet actively dismisses claims that they're a military organization, but they act very much like a military organization.
The military angle in general is very strong in this first episode, which is weird, because even from the very next episode, it's not quite like that. When Geordi meets Riker for the first time, Riker even makes him stop and present himself officially.
Sir, the Enterprise is arriving, but...
Is this an official report, Lieutenant?
Sorry, Commander. Sir, Lieutenant LaForge reporting the Enterprise arriving, but without the saucer section, sir.
When they're all up on the ship together, at one point Wesley is sitting in the captain's chair, and Picard is telling him this is the this and this is the that, and Wesley keeps interrupting him. And I like how Picard's dislike of kids comes through so strongly, and he gets so mad at Wesley and even cusses at him.
Which uses high-resolution multispectral imaging sensors.
How the hell do you know that, boy?
He obviously has an interest in the ship and how it's run, and it's not like this is the only ship of its kind.
That would be like if a kid got in your car and said, "Oh, that's the brake pedal." And I said, "How the hell do you know that?" The only original series cameo they get in this first episode is Dr. McCoy, or Bones, and he looks like the freaking Crypt Keeper.
Definitely doesn't look good. The scene itself doesn't have anything to do with anything else that happens in the entire episode. The whole thing is so corny and ridiculous and doesn't fit the tone. It's almost like, oh, that Bones.
And I like how by default, Starfleet has made him an admiral just because.
It could have been worse, but it was cheesy and dumb.
I also thought the music in that scene was really out of place. It sounded like a Lifetime original movie because of all the sappy piano music.
Damn annoying at times.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's a new ship, but she's got the right name.
Let's talk about Data. How does he not understand how to whistle?
That's a really lame way to show how he's different from humans. There's nothing emotional about whistling. And that's the scene where they introduce the holodeck. They're giving themselves the potential for a lot of interesting stories with the way these particular characters are designed and also with the introduction of elements like the holodeck. Up on the bridge, you have Troy sitting right next to the captain. To me, that says, okay, she's the second most important person on the ship.
Being half Betazoid, she can sense other people's emotions, but she spends the majority of the episode doing nothing but crying.
Such pain. Pain. You barbarian! Aye, sir. despair.
It's a cool idea, her being able to sense people's emotions, but it seems like the writers never really knew what to do with that. When Riker and her interact, she telepathically says,
Can you still sense my thoughts?
and he gives no indication that he can understand her, so maybe he can't. There had to be a better way to handle that.
Let's talk about Wesley, and possibly all of his weird sweaters.
Will Wheaton is not bad. The problem is that the character is not well written here.
It seems like a role that would be from a TV show decades before.
It seems like maybe they put him in there to make the show appeal more to kids, but it's Star Trek. It already appeals to kids.
They had to make him stand out in some way, so they decided to make him really, really smart. Throughout this whole thing, Q is still an underlying threat, which we keep drifting away from. And he tells the crew that he's going to test them and that they will fail. A ship appears and starts blasting the planet from orbit, and Q encourages them to destroy it.
The writing in general does a really good job of building tension and making everything feel like it matters. And even though there are sometimes dumb little character things, it mostly feels like they're handling their situations well.
It was a good setup for everything overall, and it's just the beginning, so that's a good sign. It turns out the natives captured this giant creature to take advantage of its powers, and the orbiting ship is actually its mate. So the Enterprise frees the captured one from the planet so the two can be together again.
We get some solid special effects, especially for a TV episode from the 80s. It's sometimes obvious that the space jellyfish are not at the scale that they're supposed to be at, but it still looks good.
Agreed. And afterwards, Q tells them they win this time, but he'll be back. Since it's the first episode, I wanted to talk about the production design. It looks futuristic, but not in an over-the-top, cheap sci-fi way.
They did a good job of fitting in with the look of the old Star Trek.
It also looks very practical, especially the displays. There's not a bunch of buttons and dials scattered everywhere just to make it look busy, and I liked it. We should also talk about the awesome intro and theme.
That intro goes on forever, but the theme is so good that I usually don't skip it.
The theme was actually taken from the first original series movie, and it was composed by Jerry Goldsmith, which is cool. It's a pretty good theme, but it's hard to top his magnum opus, which is, of course, the Gremlins theme.
To boldly go where no one has gone before.
Encounter at Farpoint. Overall,
It was a good movie-length episode where it felt like it deserved the two-parter, and it was a good intro to all the characters. But there's the fact that almost half the first episode is just the people on the bridge encountering Q before you even meet Riker and the others on the planet. That's treated almost as a completely separate story. They're dealing with Q, and Q is such a big threat that they don't really know anything about yet, but it's clearly something they need to focus on, and suddenly it's down on the planet. They should have introduced that stuff earlier because it feels like it's too much of a shift in a different direction, but it's definitely a solid opening to the show. I would give it a B+.
I would agree with the B+. The only thing that holds it back for me is the overabundance of plots and subplots going on at the same time, and the nonsense inclusion of Bones for no reason other than fan-servicey nostalgia.